生。
好きだよクルリゲ。俺はお前のためなら教師やめてもいい。
Hi. I'm always so awkward. I never know how to start these. I never know what to say. I hate intros. Alright, but I feel like they are somewhat important. Anywho, that being said, I've been making a lot of fan MVs lately, which are super fun. Love doing it. But ultimately, I do have other things that I want to talk about related to shows and movies because I'm obsessed and I typically have no one to talk about these shows and movies with, so in light of the back to school season, a particular topic popped back into my head, okay? That is the unhinged depiction of romantic relationships between teachers and students in Japanese dramas. Now, this topic first resurfaced in my head in winter of 2023 when I came across the Japanese drama titled, well, this is the English title, Falling High School Girl and Irresponsible Teacher. I was just like kind of shocked that in 2023, almost 2024, we were still making, shows centered around and romanticizing these inappropriate relationships between teachers and students. Inappropriate relationships in general, but we're talking about teachers and students specifically today. But then this made me think about how many of these depictions Japan has. I'm talking manga, I'm talking anime, I'm talking dramas, I'm talking movies, okay? So many depictions of the teacher-student relationship trope, and almost all of them end happily ever after, On top of that, there's usually not many repercussions for the teacher involved, if any repercussions, and it just further romanticizes, the idea of being in an unhinged relationship with an age gap and power dynamic. Not a good thing. Especially when these stories are told like they are supposed to be beautiful love stories. Now, that being said, Japan is obviously not the only country that has depictions of this trope. We have such classics as Pretty Little Liars with Arya and Ezra. That was unhinged. That ended happily. Or earlier this year, Miller's Girl with Jenna Ortega came out. That was another very unhinged movie. I don't really know what they were going for there, but it was wild to me nonetheless. However, Japan does have an abundance of media falling within this trope, and I just wanted to talk about some of them today. So I've picked 5 dramas from Japan to talk about. Some of them are movies, some of them are shows. So we can kind of recap them and discuss how, there are certain basic themes that make up this trope, especially in Japanese media. So let's get into that. So first up we have Close Range Love. Now this one stars Nanakomatsu and I always butcher his name, Tomohisayamashita. I probably still didn't do it very good. Anyway, that's the only reason why I wanted to watch this movie back in the day when it came out, was because of these two. Now, if you don't know who they are, you probably just haven't watched enough Japanese cinema. Nanakomatsu, she's an actress and a model, and she is married to Misaki Sada, which I found that out last year, and when I did, the first thing that popped into my head was them in Drowning in Love. Specifically the scene where he spits in her face. Because I was like, damn, they really got together after that. She also is the ex-girlfriend of G-Dragon, and G-Dragon dated her at one point. As for Tomohasi, he's another very well-known actor. The last thing I saw him in had to have been Alice in Borderlands, season 2. He's the naked guy. Yeah, so just a little like, if you think they might look familiar, they are. Okay, so the story begins with Yuni, who is a reserved, kind of awkward high schooler that really struggles to express her emotions and feelings, but she excels in like all her subjects, except for English. However, things change when the new hot English teacher, Haruka, starts working at the school. Now, of course, because of his princely-esque looks, he gains a lot of favor with the female students very quickly, but not Yuni, because she's not like the other girls. She actually finds Haruka kind of cocky and annoying. But his first order of business when he gets to the school is to go over all his students' grades to see how they're all doing in English, so that he can offer extra help for those students. Now, probably at the top of this list is Yuni, because her grade in English is not that great. So Haruka ends up having like this little after-school study session with these students. And as she spends more time with him, he kind of helps encourage her to be more upfront with her feelings and her emotions. And so she takes him up on the advice. Now, she starts to hate him a lot less, of course, the more they spend time together. That being said, she wants to get him a gift to show him her gratitude because her grades in English have improved. So when she presents him with this gift, he's not very impressed. Now, he is kind of fair at first by saying that he doesn't think it's appropriate for him to accept a gift from a student. However, he also realizes that this gift is more than just gratitude for getting her grades up. He realizes that she has fallen for him just as her other fellow students have. Now, that being said, he rejects her gift and her feelings very harshly, which makes her avoid him like the plague, as this is clearly her first crush, and she's never really expressed her feelings in general before, let alone like this, so she's not very happy with him. However, absence makes the heart grow fonder, and that's exactly what happens to Haruka. Haruka realizes his feelings for Yuni because she's been avoiding him. Now, after a few days of this avoidance, Yuni is desperate to express her feelings, and the way that she comes up to do this is by writing them down in a notebook and leaving it for Haruka. Now, she bails out on her plan immediately, just as she's gonna go put it on his desk. Somebody in the class says, "Oh, Haruka sensei's coming," and she freaks out. And instead of just sitting back in her seat, she, for whatever reason, decides to go and hide underneath the podium at the front of the class. I have no clue why she does this. As she's sitting under the podium whilst he's realizing that she's not in class, she pulls on his pant leg to get his attention. And she holds up her little notebook saying basically that she's upset with him, but she loves him. This just makes Haruka unable to contain himself, and he kisses her. Now, this kiss does not go unnoticed, as a new teacher is walking by the class and looks in and sees Haruka kissing a student. Now, you would think this is a big deal, but this teacher is not just any teacher, it's Haruka's ex-girlfriend. Now, she confronts Haruka about this later, but not with concern for the student, more so concern for herself, because she wants Haruka back. She wants to get back with him. Now, when Haruka refuses and has no interest in continuing a relationship with her, she gets upset and decides to blackmail him instead. And she ends up telling another teacher. Now, this other teacher is not just any teacher. This teacher is Yuni's cousin, who is also her legal guardian. Now, you would think that this would lead to something. And of course, Yuni's cousin, I believe his name is Kazuma, is upset, and he ponders going to the principal. But ultimately, he just confronts Haruka himself and tells him to stay away from her, which doesn't really go anywhere.
俺はクルルギと結婚します。
In the meantime, Yuni actually meets a fellow classmate that has a bit of a crush on her and wants to get to know her better after she helped him out with something. Now, of course, her heart is still taken by Haruka, so she doesn't really have a romantic interest in him, but they do remain friends. This is unfortunate that she doesn't give this boy a chance because Haruka has been pondering. After a few conversations with Kazuma and his ex-girlfriend, he's starting to realize the real consequences here. Not just consequences for him, but consequences for Yuni, potentially, which I don't think is right, but that's what he's thinking, that's what he's saying. He's also realizing because of their age gap, Yuni hasn't been able to have the chance to have experiences, you know, other experiences, date other people, etc. Especially because she's about to graduate and go to university. There's a lot of opportunity there, and if he's with her, he's kind of taking that away from her, right? So he ultimately decides to break things off with her, and he does it in a way that makes it seem like he doesn't care for her anymore or never did to begin with. Of course, Yuni is heartbroken, but with only a few short months of school left, she graduates. And after she graduates, she flies to California and starts going to university there. After only a few short months into her university experience, a conversation with the professor sparks something in her, and she realizes something. So she flies all the way back to Japan and goes to her school that she left only a few short months ago. It's actually a really funny scene because she's like standing in the hallway, like reminiscing as if she wasn't there like a few months ago. Anywho, Haruka stops dead in his tracks when he sees her in the hallway, and Kazuma also sees her in the hallway and is probably wondering why she is there.
Ariana, what are you doing here?
But despite that, she runs over to Haruka and takes his hand, runs through the school with him, and runs out the front doors. This, of course, draws a commotion because he's the hottest teacher in school, and people are wondering who this woman is that is dragging him out, as they all watch from the windows. She takes him to the beach where they have been before discussing their future and relationships, and she tells him that it took her a while, but she realizes that when he broke up with her, he wasn't being genuine about it, that he did still care for her, and that he does still care for her. He tells her that he still cares for her and that he does love her, and she tells him the same, and then he suggests that they get married the next day. As they kiss whilst the sun is setting. And that's their happily ever after? Question mark? This ending is wild to me, considering Haruka knew what he was doing the whole time. He understood the severity of him getting into a relationship with a student, and he still pursued her, which makes no sense. Earlier in the movie, a bunch of female students are in his office, or in like the teacher's offices, and they're like, you know, being all giddy with him, like, oh, sensei, like, you know, we do well in class because of you, because we love you and we have feelings for you. And this gets the attention of the vice principal, who ends up taking Haruka aside and is kind of like, look, I'm not accusing you of anything, but I'm just saying you gotta be careful, you know, make sure that things are kept appropriate. And Haruka tells him that he understands that and that he has no intentions of doing anything with these students, and that these students are just hormonal and boy crazy, and they'll get over it when they go to university. Again, he understands that these are very young people that are experiencing, romantic feelings for the first time, and that makes them vulnerable and that kind of thing. And yet he still pursues a relationship with Yumi, basically under the guise that he can't help himself, that he just desires her that much, which is insane. Because he also sees her with the male student that wanted to date her, and it makes him jealous. And it's like, dude, she's 18. Like, she's barely had any life experience yet, whereas you've had life experience, you've had other relationships. It's not really fair, is it? Anyway, the ending is absolutely crazy and absurd to me. Even when I was watching it as a teenager, back when the movie came out, I was like, is this supposed to be a happy ending? Is this supposed to be a cute romantic love story? Like, unacceptable. Oh, these glasses have no lenses in them. It's just for the aesthetic, just for the school vibes. Alright, on to the next one. Next one is a show. This one is called, the English title anyway, Falling High School Girl and Irresponsible Teacher. Now, the only reason I wanted to watch this one is because the guy that plays the teacher, what is his name? Ryo Hashimoto, is very cute. Let's get into it. So Mikoto is a straight-faced, cynical, not very social, has no friends high school girl, which makes it a big deal when she musters up the courage to confess her feelings to her crush. Now, unfortunately, this goes horribly wrong when he rejects her. And this rejection is just like the last straw for her, because it's, in her eyes, just horribly, tragically embarrassing. So she decides to end it all by going up to the school roof and standing on the edge of it, if you know what I mean. But she is swiftly interrupted by Jin, who is her physics teacher, and known for being a slacker. Thus, he has no respect from any of the students or faculty that he works with, which is understandable because he is an idiot. And instead of dissuading her from jumping off the roof, he takes a different approach by basically saying that it would be tragic for her to jump off the roof without giving him the chance to seduce her into dating him first. This is starting off strong. This conversation is so ridiculous to Mikoto that she literally just doesn't even want to be on the roof anymore with him. So he does technically stop her from jumping because she leaves. Now, although Mikoto didn't agree to any of the ridiculous notions of allowing Jin to try and seduce her and wanting to date him and that kind of thing, Jin stays strong on what he said and starts to insert himself into her life at any given moment possible. However, his flirting and seducing intentions are not the real intentions. He actually wants to make sure that she's not going to try and hurt herself again, especially when he keeps catching her in very awkwardly convenient situations. And through all these awkward encounters and situations that happen, Jin is able to kind of show her a brighter side to life, in hopes of, making her not think about offing herself again. Ultimately, these situations end up bringing them closer, and Mikoto starts to realize that they're not so different after all. And she even starts to kind of like Jin a little bit, even though she does still think he's an idiot. But because of this like newfound joy that she gets from being with Jin, she starts to want to live life, and she starts to think about her future and things like that. But it's not just her. Jin also seems to be happier now that, you know, he's been hanging out with Mikoto. That being said, Jin also reveals that he was in a similar situation to Mikoto when he was a high school student as well. And it was his teacher who actually helped him out and talked him off the ledge. He wanted Mikoto to find comfort and happiness as he once did when his teacher helped him out of a tough time. And Jin ultimately did the same, but a little bit differently. Now, that being said, as they had spent more time together, Mikoto is ready to do something that she didn't think she was ever going to do again. She confesses her feelings to Jin. This takes a lot of courage because of the rejection that she faced only a few short months ago. But she tells Jin that she loves him. And in response to her confession, Jin says that he will wait for her to graduate. Jail time. There is a season 2 to this show. This is just season 1. I did not watch season 2. I don't think I want to watch season 2. So we find out early on in the show that Mikoto is seemingly the only student that gives Jin like an ounce of respect. Because other students just see him as a complete joke, because he is. So no one really ever pays attention to him or listens to him. But Mikoto has always been at least the bare minimum amount of respectful, like during class and stuff. I think he took notice of that and had his eye on her for a while and was probably just waiting for an opportunity to come up, which ultimately happens when he encounters her on the roof, right? Because I say this because his approach to talking her off the ledge is to be like, you should date me. It's like, what? Because we actually see when he was in the same situation as a high schooler, his teacher didn't be like, hey, you should date me. His teacher came in with like a more big sister or like cool aunt approach to it. And ultimately she basically like adopted him. You know, because his home life was very bad and very abusive, and so her just showing him like an ounce of kindness was all he needed. So she came at it in a more parental way, whereas Jin comes at it at a more like, I could be your boyfriend and make you happy kind of way, which I think is wild. I'm not saying that Jin didn't want to help her. I think he truly wanted to help her, but I also think it ultimately worked in his favor that, you know, she started to fall for him. So overall, obviously, it's just very inappropriate. I wonder what season 2 is about. I guess season 2 is probably going to be like her graduating and actually getting with him. I don't know. On to the next one. So the next one is A Scum's Wish. Incredible title. I don't know who the title refers to, but incredible title. Now this one, someone felt the need to adapt it twice, so there's a manga, there's an anime, and the live action, which we will be discussing. This is a show with very mature content, and the only reason I wanted to watch it was because dorisakurada. Dori usually plays like more spicy bad boy-esque characters, so that's kind of the only reason why I wanted to watch this. This story centers around two popular high school students with the same dilemma. Hanabi and Mugi are both on the roof of the school, peering into a window below where they are staring at two teachers. One teacher is Akane, the music teacher, And the other one is Kanai, I think it's the math teacher. And as they both stare longingly through the window at the teachers, they realize that they are in the same situation. They are both in love with their teacher. The realization that they're in the same boat makes them understand each other. Thus, they come up with the plan to use each other to soothe their loneliness through physical intimacy. So Hanabi has known Kanai for a very long time. He's actually a close family friend and used to tutor her when she was a kid. So of course he is her first love. Not that he has any inkling of that. And Mugi is in a similar scenario where Akane actually used to tutor him in music before she became his music teacher at school. So he's also known her for quite some time. Now, as the story goes on and these two use each other for physical intimacy that they cannot receive from the ones that they truly love, they decide that it's just not enough anymore and that they should try to confess their feelings to their teachers. Oh boy. And while these two work up the courage to eventually tell their teachers their feelings, the teachers are doing some confessing of their own. So Kanai confesses that he kind of has a crush on Akane. He thinks she's a sweet and kind woman, but Akane is kind of putting up a front. Now, her more real side is that of a seductive woman. She seems to get validation from seducing men. She's only ever had to rely on her beauty her entire life, and as soon as she realized that, it was a validation that she liked. So yeah, but despite wanting to seduce these men, she never has any actual intention of wanting to be in any relationship with them. She reveals this to Kanai, who doesn't really seem too fazed. He still likes her and he still cares for her, which is new for Kanai, because most men only want one thing from her and she's okay with giving that to them. Now, Hanabi and Mugi finally build up enough courage to confess their feelings to further teachers, and that was a choice. So Hanabi confesses to Kanai that she has a crush on him, and it doesn't really seem like she's expecting much out of this. At this point, it seems more like she knows what the answer is going to be, but she just needs him to actually say it so that she can move on with her life. And he does reject her, but in a very gentle and kind way, since he does see her as family, you know, and he understands that she is very young and impressionable, and that's why he was probably her first love, and now she feels like she can move on because of the rejection. Now she feels free. Mugi obviously confesses his feelings to Kane, who just flat out reveals that she knows that he has a crush on her and she's known for a very long time. Instead of rejecting him, she decides to make his dreams come true by sleeping with him. Thus begins the start of their sexual relationship. Mugi is not satisfied with this relationship. He wants more. He wants her to be exclusive with him. He wants her to be his girlfriend. And Akane is just like, no. She has no real interest in Mugi. Thus, she ends things with him because she feels that although she doesn't love Kanai right now, she could learn to love him, since he's been able to look past her flaws and still care for her either way. So she's like, yeah, I'm gonna go and pursue that, since he still wants me. Which of course breaks Mugi's heart, meaning that neither him or Hanabi ended up with the one that they loved. So since these two are no longer useful for each other, Hanabi and Mugi end their relationship. They don't even stay friends. After all they've been through, they don't even stay friends. They just like completely cold turkey end it. And the only ones that seem to have gotten what they wanted is Akane and Kanai, who are now engaged. Absolutely absurd. This show is absolutely wild with very mature content and no repercussions. My little recap barely scratched the surface, to be honest. The story is wild. That being said, Akane is vile. Okay, this woman not only takes advantage of her student that she knows has a crush on her, but she also sleeps with him in his house, in his bed, where he lives with his parents. Like, isn't that insane? I don't know how she never gets caught. But yeah, like multiple times with no intention of actually being with him. I don't even know why she does it, honestly. Like, it's like crazy. And I wonder how Kanai would feel if he knew that she was sleeping with a student, because he seemed, you know, when Hanabi confessed to him, he seemed very stern with like understanding that there's a very large age gap between them and that she's young and naive. So her little crush on him is, you know, it's fleeting. It will go away eventually, kind of thing. Whereas Akane just like, she just didn't care. Like, she knows Mugi is young and, you know, impressionable, and yet she still just goes for it with no intention of it leading anywhere. I feel like if Kanai knew that she had slept with a student, I feel like that is the thing I think would make him lose interest in her. Because he seems like a pretty stand-up guy. Yeah, absolutely insane. On to the next. So next we have Mr. Sahara and Toki-kun. This one is a BL, which is why I wanted to include it, because I wanted to show that this trope doesn't just exist in heterosexual relationships. This trope it's widespread. So Toki is a delinquent. He gets into a lot of fights, but despite his rough exterior, you know, like stereotypical delinquent, he has bleached hair, he doesn't wear his uniform shirt buttoned up, that kind of thing. Despite all that, he's actually very sweet and rather kind-hearted. He starts making friends through little acts of service that make his classmates realize he's not as scary as what they thought he was. In fact, he's a goofball. Now, because of his good nature and capability to make good friends, the physical education teacher, Sahara, sees potential in him to do well in school and stay out of trouble, and he encourages him to do so. Toki starts to think that Sahara is really cool, thus he begins to turn his delinquent ways around to try and impress Sahara so that Sahara will continue to be proud of him, which begins this one-sided, very earnest love between Toki and Sahara. Now, as Toki starts doing things that he thinks will impress Sahara and make him proud of him, Toki's friends start to realize, like, dude, you are totally crushing hard here. Like, you have a crush, for real. And this is new to him. He's like, oh, a crush. Interesting. Now he's able to confirm this after a kiss with Sahara that happens during the school play of Snow White. Toki is playing the role of Snow White, and Sahara has to step in and play the prince because the guy that was going to play the prince was sick. I don't know why they couldn't find another student, and Sahara had to do it, but The kiss is accidental. They weren't actually supposed to kiss, but Sahara slips and falls and lands on Toki's lips. So I don't know why he didn't sustain any repercussions for this, even though the kiss was an accident. He shouldn't have been in the kids' school play to begin with. Anyway, but this kiss really makes Toki realize that he definitely has a crush on Sahara. Now, just as Toki is starting to feel like he's getting closer to Sahara and maybe getting somewhere with him, Sahara's old crush and classmate from high school is a new teacher at the school. Because of course he is. And Sahara actually finds out that his old crush liked him back the whole time. And he still likes him now and wants to pursue a relationship now that they're older. Of course, this realization makes Sahara really sit down and take account of his own feelings, and he really thinks about where his heart lies now. So after some sorting through his emotions and feelings and such, Sahara confesses his feelings to Toki. But he doesn't want Toki to confess his feelings to him, not yet anyway. He wants Toki to figure out what he wants to do in life before confessing his feelings. Okay, I guess because he doesn't want Toki to feel like he's his entire world, you know, since he's young and impressionable. Anywho, now this doesn't take long because we're at Toki's graduation day. Literally with diploma in hand, he walks out of the school doors and sees Sahara waiting for him outside, and he runs into his arms, tells him he loves him, and they share their first real kiss. So I guess he figured out what he wanted to be. A mess. Now, throughout the show, they show flashbacks from Toki's perspective of him as a kid being bullied by some older kids, and this high schooler would step in and kind of save him every time, protect him from the bullies. Now, for a while, Toki couldn't remember the face of the high schooler that would help him, until it is finally revealed that it was Sahara. So Sahara and Toki actually met when Toki was in grade 4 and Sahara was in high school. So that tells you a bit of the age gap there. Oh my god. So I didn't really like this like flashback narrative because I feel like it implies that their current status of a relationship is okay because they knew each other when they were younger. And I'm like, if anything, I think that proves how inappropriate their relationship is currently. Because it gives us a better picture of the age gap between them, which is rather large. Yeah. I can't with these stories. On to the next one. This is the last one. Last but not least, Sensei Kunshu. Home stretch here. So this one is similar to Close Range Love in a few ways, so you'll be able to tell that. But this one is way more comical, I will say. This one is definitely funny. It's an entertaining watch because it's just so absurd. It's very comedic based, okay? So let's get into it. Aiwa is a boy-obsessed high school girl, and she really wants a boyfriend. That is like her goal in life currently, you know what I'm saying? So after school one day, she thinks she's gonna have this like romantic, dramatic confession to her crush, but before she even gets the words out, he's like, yeah, sorry, no. Like, he rejects her before she even actually confesses.
君のことが
ごめん。
レン君のことが
ごめんなさい。
いや好きです。
ごめんなさい、無理です。
This, of course, breaks her heart, and she goes to a noodle shop to eat her feelings, because duh. And she's sitting basically just eating bowls and bowls of noodles while she's like on FaceTime or something with her best friend, just crying. It's a comical scene because she's sitting in between all of these like ajashis who are just like got off of work, and she's just there eating bowl after bowl in her high school uniform, sobbing. That being said, when she goes to pay, I guess she didn't expect it to come out to as much as what it did, and her wallet is empty. So she's freaking out about what she's gonna do. She's like, I don't got the funds. But luckily, a prince with glasses, okay, I love a glasses guy. This guy's actually really cute. A prince with glasses steps in and pays for her. And after such a heartbreak only a few hours ago, she seems to be over it as soon as she sees this cute ass guy. So she goes after him and she's like, wait, like, how can I repay you? She basically wants to see him again, right? And he's like, you don't need to, that's fine. And she's like, no, but like, I really like want it. And he's like, no. And then he walks off into the night. Now, luckily for her, the next day at school, there is a supply teacher that's going to be with them for a while as their usual teacher is like sick or something. And that is Yuki, the guy that paid for her meal last night. She's very dramatic about it. As soon as she recognizes him, she literally stands up from her desk and points at him like, oh! And he's just like, sit down and stop pointing. Yuki has very like, straight-faced humor. He's quite funny in that way. Anywho, he's not surprised and does not care to see her at all. Like, it just doesn't faze him. Whereas Ayu, on the other hand, sees this as fate. She is like, the universe is telling me something. I need to pursue this man. So, of course, this means coming up with silly tactics to get this man to like her. But that's not going to be as easy as she thinks because Yuki is strong-willed. He will not break. He also doesn't seem to have interest in, like, anyone. Now, after a lot of these tactics just fail miserably, she's getting kind of tired of chasing Yuki. You know, it's getting exhausting. Luckily for her, she gets a bit of a break when a fellow, you know, student asks her on a date, and she's thrilled. Considering it seems like she's usually the one chasing these boys, so it's like nice for someone to ask her out. She's like, awesome. She's super excited for the date, and she shows up and is not pleased with anything during the date. Not one thing. So literally just anything this guy does icks her out, although I don't think most of the things he did were inherently bad or wrong. The pizza thing, piece of pizza, that whole situation was a little icky. But other than that, he doesn't really do anything to warrant her reaction. Now, when Yuki gets wind of this date that she went on and how horrible she found it, he basically explains to her the whole reason she didn't enjoy herself was simply because she has no real interest in this guy. Which makes her kind of realize, like, okay, maybe there is more to dating and getting a boyfriend than just the very surface level things that she was thinking. Because her whole reasoning for wanting a boyfriend is she's like, I want someone to make out with. Anyway, of course, Yuki saying these kind of things to her just makes her like him more, right? However, one day she finally thinks that she's like getting somewhere with him when he asks her to a piano concert with him. She thinks this is like a date. It's not. I guess he just had like extra tickets or something, so he figured he'd bring some students. The other student he was bringing bailed out like halfway through, so yeah. Although it was not a date, she enjoyed herself nonetheless. That being said, when he goes to drop her off at home, she ends up leaving her journal in the car, which he gives back to her right before she leaves, but not before looking through it. and he sees all her little schemes to try and get him to fall in love with her, all her fantasies and plans, which she's not super shy about, actually. Now, of course, Yuki does not take any of this seriously, and he doesn't really care. He's just like, here, because he understands that she's young, naive, and impressionable. Keep that in mind. He understands this. Now, the next day at school, there's a assembly for a big announcement. The announcement being that a seemingly famous pianist is going to be filling in as the supply music teacher for a little while. Of course, it's the pianist that they saw just the day before. So Iowa is a little bit surprised when she sees this pianist, Samon, who I'm just gonna call Sam for short, talking to Yuki. When she gets a little closer, she recognizes her from a photo that Yuki has of him and his childhood friend, who happens to be this woman. Now, Iowa is feeling pretty defeated in her mission here, particularly after Sam tells her that she likes Yuki and that she plans to take Yuki with her when she leaves in a few weeks to go back to Paris. What? Now, of course, because Sam is beautiful and talented and Yuki's childhood best friend, Iowa feels like, okay, I obviously don't have a shot here. I'm just gonna give up, basically, since she's been trying to get him to fall for her for months now, or weeks at least, and nothing has worked, so she's kind of just like, obviously he's gonna pick her and not me, so I give up. I will say Sam, saying that to Iowa was a little harsh because Sam did know that Iowa had a crush on Yuki because she literally tells Yuki in front of Sam that she loves him.
しょうがないじゃないですか。先生が好きなんだから。こんな綺麗な幼馴染が現れたら勘ぐるに決まってるじゃないですか。不安で怖くてイラつくに決まってるじゃないですか。好きなんだから。落ち着いて。落ち着けるわけないでしょ。こっちの先生が大好きでずっと胸ブンブンブンなんです。分かったから。
Sam was standing right there, and then Sam decides to tell her this after the fact, like, well, I like Yuki and I'm gonna take him back to Paris with me. Outrageous and rude. But anyway, so to solidify her giving up, she decides to throw away her journal with all her schemes and plans and fantasies of Yuki. However, her friend, I believe his name was Kotak, her friend stops her from burning it and actually takes the journal from her, and then she doesn't really care what happens to it after that. But Kotak, being her friend and also having a bit of a crush on her, goes to Yuki and gives him the journal and is like, look man, she gave up on you. You've hurt her one too many times, and that's that. Which is unfortunate because Yuki was actually finally coming to the consensus coming to the consensus that he also has feelings for Iowa. But he was just a little too late because she already gave up. And instead of trying to change her mind in the moment, he just accepts the facts. So we fast forward 2 years and it's graduation day. All right, Iowa is finally graduating. So she goes to her little cubby or whatever in her classroom, and when she opens it, she sees her journal. Something that she hasn't seen for the past 2 years, and something that she thought she threw away. So she flips through it really quick and sees that Yuki has written in it. It's basically a lead up to his confession of him saying nice things, how he made her, or how she made him, feel lively again and felt like there was purpose and made him enjoy teaching, something that he didn't think he was going to like, and etc., etc. And then the last thing he says is to go to the math study office, whatever. So she books it across the campus, okay? She runs across the campus as fast as she can and dramatically bursts into the room to see Yuki standing there. And he walks over to her, gets on one knee, kisses her hand, and tells her that he loves her. A mess. The way he confessed is the way that she imagined and wanted him to confess to her. And she wrote that in her journal. So he was literally playing out a real fantasy of hers. Minus the kiss. He didn't actually kiss her on the lips like she wanted. But other than that, I guess they're supposed to live happily ever after, question mark? Now, this ending is outrageous to me because he was gone for 2 years. That's a good amount of time for her to get over him. But then he came back and was like, hey, I actually like you too. I liked you the whole time. I just didn't tell you back then. And it's like, what? I don't know. I just think the ending was absurd. I just think it's sad that these, students don't get the chance to date around and live life, because I feel like ultimately it's just gonna end up in resentment. And just like in Close Range Love, when the teacher gets the opportunity to date someone their own age, they don't take that opportunity. And again, even when the student gets the opportunity to date someone their own age, they again don't take that opportunity and still decide that it's appropriate to go with the teacher or with the student. And it's like, what are we doing here? Now, Ayua actually finds out at the end, like once they graduate, that her friend Kotang, that's just not his name. Oh my gosh, hold on. That her friend Kotang actually had a crush on her the whole time and just never told her because he knew that she didn't feel the same, and I guess he just never thought to try. I don't know. But, and even though she doesn't have romantic feelings for him, it does show that there's a potential there for her to have a relationship with someone her own age, because they were friends for years, you know what I'm saying? Like, she liked him as a friend, at least. And, I just feel like there was like a potential there for her to at least open that window into dating people her own age, and that not all people her own age are going to reject her or not be suited for her, etc. So, yeah, that was the end of Sensei Kunshu. An absolute mess. But I will say it was definitely comical. It was enjoyable to watch. It's kind of funny, so... Anyway. Final thoughts. Okay, so I'm doing a little voiceover for final thoughts because when I did it the first time normally, I didn't really like how it turned out. I feel like I couldn't gather my thoughts as clearly, so thus the voiceover. So yeah, let's talk about the themes. So I find that there's about 4 themes in these shows and movies. So first off, usually the student starts to fall for the teacher after a problem arises in their lives, making them turn to an authority figure for guidance, comfort, and understanding, right? For example, in Close Range Love, Yuni doesn't know how to express her feelings and her emotions, so the adults around her in her life always think that she's okay. They never really worry about her. So when Haruka shows up, he's able to recognize when she's frustrated or sad, because when he was younger, he was kind of the same way as her, therefore lending her a sense of understanding, which makes her ultimately feel closer to him rather quickly. So in Mr. Sahara and Toki-kun, Toki ultimately gets guidance by Sahara to stop being a delinquent, and in return, Toki feels that someone actually cares and believes in him and doesn't just see him as like a troublemaker, because most of the other teachers have like given up on him already, but Sahara doesn't. Theme number 2. So the teachers in these relationships are often going through a crisis in their adult lives, right? thus seeking a sense of relief and control, which they ultimately find in the naive student. The student usually doesn't see the problems that the teacher is having in their lives and just sees them as a stable authority figure, which gives the teacher some sense of validation that someone their own age wouldn't be able to give them, at least not in the same way. For example, in Falling High School Girl and Irresponsible Teacher, Jin is not taken seriously by anybody in his life, not the adults, not the students, and he's ultimately lonely after the teacher who took him in passes away. So when he realizes he can help a student, aka Mikoto, who was going through something that he once went through, it gives him a sense of fulfillment and quells his loneliness, so he jumps at the chance. Or in Sensei Kunshu, Yuki is very lost and unfulfilled in his life, so when Aya comes along, with her bright, fun, and unapologetic personality, he's very drawn to her innocence and finds himself enjoying life again because she's around. Number 3 is a third-party love interest, either for the teacher or the student or both. This love interest is age-appropriate and typically a better option that is never chosen in the end. And all the dramas we talked about have a third-party love interest, either for the teacher, the student, or both. For example, in A Scumswish, Hanabi and Mugi are the obvious love interests for each other, and at one point they do seemingly start liking each other, even contemplating dating after they inevitably get rejected by their teachers. This doesn't happen because Mugi doesn't get rejected right away, and by the time he does, Hanabi's kind of over the idea. However, they do also have other love interests, so I didn't really talk about it before, but Hanabi has a female friend who actually has a crush on her, so they kind of have a thing going on throughout the show as well. And Mugi has like this childhood friend that comes along at one point who's obsessed with him. My point is, there were other options that were age appropriate that don't get chosen in the end. In Falling High School Girl and Irresponsible Teacher, Mikoto also has a love interest, like a third-party love interest. It's this, I didn't talk about it, but it's this guy who she ends up saving from unaliving himself because he's kind of going through, he's kind of depressed like how she is, and so he's going through some stuff. Basically, they're kind of in a similar boat, so she can relate to him. And again, he's like a fellow classmate. So, another very good option that is not chosen in the end. Lastly, number 4 is a lack of repercussions for the teachers involved. In all these depictions, there is a lack of consequences regarding the teacher. This is especially frustrating when other adults in the story are aware of what's going on and just do nothing about it. For example, in Closerangelove, we have Haruka's ex-girlfriend who finds out as soon as she starts working at the school about his, inappropriate relationship with the student, and even though she contemplates, doing something about it, what she does do is talk to Yuni's cousin, who's her guardian and also works at the school, and she tells him, but he also doesn't really do anything significant to stop the relationship from happening. And it's really frustrating because in the end they end up happily ever after. So that being said, the age of consent has a lot to do with the minimal punishment, as there is no government law in Japan against having a romantic or a sexual relationship with a student. However, individual education institutions would determine what their own rules are for their employees. So, for example, if a university professor, if it's in their school's contract and rules that they cannot have relations with a student, then if they break that rule and get caught, they would obviously be terminated. The termination is probably the most that would happen, along with social shame, because it's obviously considered unethical for a teacher to enter a romantic or sexual relationship with a student, as it can be seen as an abuse of power and violation of trust. The only time the punishment may get to a more severe level is if the teacher is in a relationship with a student that is under the age of consent. So the age of consent in Japan is 16 currently. Therefore, obviously, if a teacher is having relationships with a student under that age, then it's considered illegal because it's under the age of consent. So why are these relationships romanticized in shows and movies and books? The simple answer, it's taboo. It's a taboo that represents a forbidden dynamic that contrasts with social norms, such as the allure of power dynamics combined with the idealization of youth and innocence plays a significant role in these taboo narratives. It serves as a form of escapism for both the creator and consumer of the media, allowing them to explore fantasies that are not acceptable in real life. That being said, nowadays people are less tolerant to media depictions centered around the romanticization of inappropriate relationships, as this topic is very sensitive and not usually handled with the care necessary to tell these kinds of stories in a way that doesn't glorify them. There are plenty of examples of this specific topic being handled poorly. For example, Pretty Little Liars depicts many inappropriate relationships between adults and minors throughout the series, with Arya and Ezra being the most memorable as they are married by the end of the show. Or all the movie adaptations of Lolita. I've not watched any of them myself because it icks me out, but I know I've heard many people talk about it, and it seems like every depiction of Lolita is absolutely absurd. They seem to age up the main character, Dolores Hayes, and intentionally sexualize her in an attempt to validate the actions of Humbert Humbert, and that's just obviously atrocious. And if I remember correctly, the author of these books also does not approve of any of the films. At the end of the day, if you enjoy these types of stories, you need to remember they are fantasies. They are not acceptable to play out in real life, and the actors in these shows and films are typically well over the age that they're depicting. But I think what it really comes down to here, at least with this topic, is Japan is on top when it comes to depicting unhinged, inappropriate, messy-ass tropes. That being said, I may visit more of these messy tropes that Japan has for us. But until then, thanks for watching, and yeah, I don't know how to end these. They're always so awkward. Bye.
And